low latency networks, our solutions around cybersecurity, but also the work we do in customer and employee experience and a wide variety of industry solutions. And I think the purpose of our company is we connect for good. We really want to accelerate initiatives across our whole business to drive growth through technology, which is responsible, inclusive, and sustainable. And sustainability, I think, is close to our heart for over 30 years. We recently launched our BT Manifesto, where we talk about how we make technology inclusive, responsible, and sustainable. And sustainability is for us net zero. It's around, and we have set ourselves, of course, ambitious targets, but it's also helping and making sure that as a sector, ICT helps to reduce emissions in other sectors. And I think we support most of our customers who have carbon reduction targets themselves.
Okay.
And last but not least, we want to create an environment where we create a circular BT group, right? Full year 31, want to make sure that we are in a circular tech and total telco ecosystem. So a lot of ambitious targets to really contribute to a better environment in society.
Okay, thank you so much, Joris, for that introduction. Markus, if you could please introduce yourself, tell us what is DHL supply chain, and you're the CIO and COO. Tell us about how much this is a priority.
Very happy to do so. Hello, Hendrik. Hello, everybody on the channels here. My name is Markus Voss. I'm the Global CIO and COO of DHL Supply Chain, responsible for supply chain solutions, 2,500 warehouses, transportation management, orchestration of logistics for many B2B customers across the planet. Sustainability is a very important topic. You've seen it maybe if you have early on been in the intro. Logistics is responsible for about 20% of carbon emissions, so we have a very big role to play. We are very eager and determined to bring the footprint of logistics down in DHL. We've pledged to invest 7 billion over the next couple of years until 2030 into driving the carbon footprint down to deliver the science-based target for us. It is one of the most important topics that many of our customers are asking us about, and we are very committed to make that happen. And I think technology has a big role to play there.
Yeah, and it's amazing, and you said it also in your video. DHL and Deutsche Post DHL, 600,000 people, and you're part of the business supply chain, 140,000 people. So yeah, big impact. What you guys can do. Thank you for that introduction, Markus. Gunter, from the airport in Brussels, please tell us a little bit more about yourself, about Bekaert, and why sustainability is on your agenda.
Glad to do so. Thank you, Hendrik, and welcome everyone to the channel. From the airport, at least maybe not the most sustainable place, but I will have an excuse on that. My name is Gunter van Craen. I'm a member of the executive committee of Bekaert, and part of my roles is looking after how we digitally transform Bekaert. And for those who don't know, Bekaert is a multinational company active in almost every country in the world for the last 140 years, and we typically transform steel into all sorts of steel wire solutions that you can find in a lot of applications that you daily use, whether they are bridges, elevators, or cars with tires. It's from a sustainability perspective, it's a heavy industry type of company, which means that we have multiple opportunities. But just to kind of like in the intro, take two of them. One is, of course, while we do transformation of steel, we use a lot of natural resources, and we actually have a large footprint in CO2, which is an opportunity for us to figure out with technology how we're going to lower that. But I think also then, secondly, and maybe even more importantly, is that our solutions are everywhere in the world, and we have the ambition to create much more smarter and safer and sustainable solutions than we have today, and transform our full portfolio of what we have out there as products into the market to a more sustainable future for everyone, whether that's in construction, whether that's in the energy, or whether that's in the automotive space. So I'll talk about it a little bit more, I think, later on, but that's two important parts of our strategy.
Yeah. So next to logistics, a very heavy industry, and then we have complete opposite of the spectrum. Wiebren, you come from ABN AMRO Bank. So tell us a little bit more about yourself, your role in the bank, and what is how is sustainability important in your company?
Yes, thank you, Henrik, and all others, and good afternoon. So ABN AMRO is a bank, and I think everybody knows what a bank does or should do. But currently, the banks are also asked to direct their money, their capital, their funding into the ESG-rated and more sustainable directions. So that is what my colleagues on the commercial side are doing, the sustainable financing area. Me personally, I worked for 25 years on the IT side of the bank. And since we are talking about sustainable IT today, I got an invitation, very happy, very thankful for that. I've worked in different areas of IT, different jobs, from operations to design and engineering. But lately, I've been focusing more and more on sustainability. As we can not only ask our clients to shift towards more sustainable practices, we should also do it ourselves. We have a massive operations for running the bank, and that operations, as you know by now, is mostly IT. It's highly digitalized, highly automated. So IT actually has the majority of the footprint of the bank, its own operations. So we also have to, if we want to become more sustainable ourselves, our IT has to become more sustainable. That's why we are focusing on that. And since half a year or so, I'm actually now full-time focusing on this topic within the bank. And I will talk more about it later on.
Okay, super. Thank you for that, Wiebren. So you're very, very hands-on in a quite a big bank, and so lots of stuff that you can share in this panel here today. And then last but not least, Niklas, could you please introduce yourself and maybe also tell us, you have written this sustainable IT playbook. Why the hell did you write this book? Where does that idea came from?
Sure. Thank you very much, Henrik, and glad to be here today. And my name is Niklas Sundberg. I'm a CIO at ABLOY Global Solutions Division. ABLOY is the world leader in access solutions. And to answer your question, why I decided to write this book was that ABLOY is a company that focuses a lot on sustainability. We've been working on it since 2008 in a structured format. We're into our third 5-year circle of our 5-year plan for sustainable ESG questions. And in October of 2020, we committed to science-based targets and committed ourselves to halve our CO2 footprint by 2030 and to eradicate it by 2050. And as a result of that, we were also asked as functional leaders to come up with a strategy for how do we get to the race to net zero. And when I started researching this topic, I realized that for a CIO, for a technology leader who has a fairly wide spectrum in terms of managing a number of different verticals within IT, I realized that there wasn't really anything on the market. There were specific areas where you could find good practice of sustainability, but there wasn't really a playbook where you can sort of go and resource and come up with your strategy in how you frame this. How do you establish sort of the baseline for where your starting point is, and to at least set your initial target to 2030. So that's
and
really the big ambition.
There is no book, so I can better write it than if it's not there, then I'll make it. I mean, must have been a lot of work going in there. How long did it take you to write this?
Yeah, I think I had obviously a lot of research done already. But if you would have asked me actually a year ago if I would be an author today, I probably would have said no, because I actually started writing the book with my publisher in February of this year. So it's been a very, very intense process, a lot of early mornings between 5 and 7 in the morning before the family wakes up, but also a very structured process, and also purpose to get this out to the market, because I felt that this is something that everybody needs to educate themselves on, to get inspired, but also to take action. So I was driven by a purpose to get this done and get it out there. So fairly quick journey, I would say.
Okay, thank you for that introduction. So we are going to discuss sustainable IT. And so what we're going to do is we're going to talk about 4 things. First, we're going to say, define a little bit, what is it, in fact? What is this sustainability? We all know why it's important, but so let's bring some structure and some common vocabulary in there. The second thing that we're going to do is discuss sustainability in IT itself. So what do we do with our data centers, applications, data, and so on? The third thing that we're going to discuss is sustainability with or by IT. How can IT help the business to become more sustainable? And then last, and certainly not least, very important, is how can we get this started? Or if you have already started in your organization, how can you accelerate sustainable IT? And so, Niklas, this sustainable IT and sustainability in general comes with quite some new vocabulary, right? So there's quite a number of abbreviations and words that we all need to learn and get comfortable with. And so you have shared, and we will also share a number of slides that you have provided to the audience here. And so I want to maybe start with this one here, the taxonomy. Could you just in 2 minutes explain us what is scope 1, 2, and 3 in general, but then specifically for sustainable IT?
Sure, I'm happy to do so. So what you see on the top line is what you would see normally in the context of an enterprise in terms of how you need to address your scope 1, your scope 2, and scope 3. So your scope 1 is everything that's your direct emissions within the 4 walls of your company. Then your scope 2 is everything that is indirect emission from energy that you consume. It could be electricity, it could be heating, it could be cooling, and so on. But then for most companies, the majority of your emissions is either going to be in your upstream or your downstream in terms of transportation, in terms of the products and solutions that you're selling and providing to the marketplace, your corporate travel, for example, energy, fuel, any leased assets, for example. And on a bottom line, because I felt also there was a need to also explain how, as a technology leader, can you put this into context? And where should you be focusing your action areas in terms of addressing where you can make the most impact? And what I found, unless you are a data center provider or maybe a telecom provider like BT, you're not going to have that much scope 1 emission inside the 4 walls of your operations, because you're heavily relying on partners like BT and others, for example, telecom providers. But you are definitely going to have a number of indirect emissions for buying electricity, heating, cooling, and so forth. But then the most important thing is that as we transition to cloud, as we are consuming more as a service, the majority of the emissions and the indirect emissions that you're going to have within your enterprise from an IT perspective is your infrastructure as a service, your PaaS, your platform as a service, software as a service. But any software that you buy, for example, any hardware that you buy, it's an indirect emission. It's something that's called embodied emission. But then also the professional service providers that you are using, for example. Maybe you have an outsourced first line support, or you have a provider for application management, for example. That's also in your scope 3.
Okay.
And then finally, if you have any leased equipment, for example, some telecom providers today, they provide leasing options for smartphones, for example, or IT equipment like laptops and desktops, for example.
Okay,
so
super.
that's sort of a fairly quick one around that.
And another thing that you have introduced, Niklas, and now we come to the rest of the panel here. If you have introduced sustainability in IT, and you call it the IT footprint, and sustainability by IT, you call it the handprint, and IT for society, the hardprint. I mean, in footprint, handprint, I can understand. Tell us a bit more about IT for society and what do you mean with hardprint?
Yes. So when we talk about sustainability, it's not only about the environmental aspects. So it's also about the social aspects and also around the governance aspects. So I think it's important to encapsulate, obviously, your footprint, your handprint, which is more targeted towards the environmental pieces. But then IT for society is everything around your social responsibility, the social contract that you have as a company, for example, the way you're acting as a player within your community, or the compliance rules or code of conduct for your vendors in terms of using fair market practices for producing your material or fair market conditions for workers that are in your vendor ecosystem, for example.
Okay, super. Okay, let's open it up a little bit and let's look at the different panelists here, and let's talk about IT footprint, handprint, hardprint, and where your focus is. I can imagine Gunter, for instance, that I mean you're really into heavy industry. So what are your targets and where are you going with mainly your handprint then, I guess?
Yeah, it's really a focus area for us because I think we have obviously our strategy as a business, but we have 3 transversal strategies which we truly believe in that will transform our company, and sustainability is one of it, next to innovation and digital. As a company, we've signed up to the SBTi targets as well because we want to stay away from greenwashing. And it's given that in our production processes, we use a lot of electricity, we use natural resources. Some of our focus is really on that, is to optimize how we produce the products that we bring to market. And typically, we have high ambitions to go 50% lower by 2030 and then be net carbon zero by 2050, and also we aim not only for carbon neutrality, but we also aim for water reduction, wastewater reduction, which is truly also important to us because we talk a lot about the CO2 at this point in time, but maybe water will become one of the next bigger problems that we have, and we need to think forward on that as well. So we have clear objectives around that, and we've created strategies within the company where you can see actually that sustainability, digital, and innovation are going to come together because everything which we need to do from a sustainable perspective, when you look at our handprint, will require novel technologies, which for some actually hasn't been invented yet, but then it will also need to be the application of those novel technologies with the data solutions that go behind it. And maybe one of the more tangible examples that I can give is that we look a lot at the reporting side of things, but where we truly want to make an impact is to look at our energy consumptions in the various plants around the world, which we have. And we do that in a somewhat agile manner, if you want. We've borrowed the agile methodology and kind of like took it to the enterprise level to build squad teams in most of our plants that are looking at how we can reduce in standard ways our CO2 footprint. And that has been a raving success so far. Because obviously also there's an economical value to that. With the rising of the inflation and electricity costs come up, you see now also that there is not the tension between sustainability and business is getting, I think, a little bit resolved by the fact that it also makes economical sense to do also these initiatives, which will help in driving those strategies. And I truly believe, I think as a company, we are also working with Bekaert and the Bekaert Foundation, where the mantra is to kind of like figure out what you can do today and how it will make economic sense and bring that into practice. And that's exactly what we are doing. And we are making our early wins right now. We see the effect on our emissions going down faster than we think. And we also see the P&L impact, which is a bonus to us.
Okay, super. Who wants to add to that? Maybe Joris or Markus?
Markus first.
Yeah, I'm happy to chip in here. I think on the 3 scopes that were discussed here today, we all have a very strong role to play We could make ourselves as CIOs very easy, I think. We just buy green electricity, which in most major markets is something that you can relatively easily do. But then, as Niklas was explaining, there is a huge scope 3 involved in our role here as well. And I think when it comes to the heart, as CIOs and as I guess also people who are fact-driven, we can use technology, we can use data analytics to do a lot for improving the way that we use resources. And that's something in logistics, obviously, that's very tangible. If we are not optimizing the way that we transport goods, or even the rack that goes to the data center, to any of your hyperscalers, that is something that actually has also, even if the electricity was green, that has a footprint. And we need to think about these type of emissions as well, and then optimize that any type of spare parts are much closer to the point of consumption. We plan ahead, we use the data, and we drive much more efficiency, and we don't ship any air across the planet, but really utilize all the resources. And this is where I think we all have to teach our people to think about these things as well, and understand the data, know their data, use the data, and then kind of own it as well. So that's something I think we have to go beyond the traditional areas of just driving a new technology application.
Okay. Joris, Patricia, you want to add to that?
Yeah, no, let me echo. I think Markus and Gunter called out already a couple of brilliant examples, right? For us, what I said, it starts with our purpose. We connect for good. So back to what Niklas was saying, the footprint, the handprint, and the hardprint, right? For us, the purpose is translated in ambitious, right? What I said, net zero by 2030. We're massively investing in, of course, we are already using 100% renewable energy. We are massively investing in optimizing and modernizing our networks, resulting in 80% less energy consumption of our core assets. We are introducing ecosyms in the mobile space, right? But also we're looking at developing with partners dashboards that makes it measurable, so that you can actually track, trace, and see how you can even do better. So all type of things that are contributing, I think, to the overall result. And last but not least, we have set in 2041, we have a bit of a fiscal type different calendar. We want to have a net zero ecosystem. So we are very much committed to only work with partners, but also do business with customers that have the similar or same ambitions that we have. Because at the end of the day, back to Niklas' heartbeat, right? I think it is not something you can realize on your own. You need to encourage and to make sure that you make it inclusive and include your wider ecosystem to deliver on the overall outcomes we're looking for.
Okay, super. I think that sets a little bit the context for what we want to discuss today. And so let's focus now on sustainability in IT, and let's look at what are really the fundamental building blocks. And Wiebren, I would like to share one of your slides that we're also going to share with the rest of the public here. And that is what you have already done within ABN AMRO Bank. Can you, in 2-3 minutes, talk us through your approach and the different steps that you have taken so far?
Sure. I'll elaborate a bit on this slide. This is a high-level overview of what we've done over the past 2.5 years, or maybe nearly 3 years by now. So we started researching the topic of sustainable IT, noticing that actually, indeed, IT comes with a footprint also. So technology, I think, brings us a lot of nice things and good things where we can make our operations more smooth and efficient. But we also have to acknowledge that technology itself has a footprint. So this is where we started back end of 2019. Then the bank also came up with a new purpose, banking for better for generations to come, which was a clear commitment to sustainability also, because there was also a call to action called Sustainability Shift. And then we had a conversation with our senior management on MT side, our CIO, our CITO, Christian Monveld at that moment in time, shouldn't we also have IT targets? So the bank's now stating the bank's targets, but should IT also have targets for itself? And we came up with the 2 targets in red: a reduced CO2 footprint and going for circularity of IT assets by 2030, which is quite a moonshot target. I realize that now. Little did we know back then. It was kind of taking a step forward and striving for a ultimate goal. Mm-hmm. And these still are our goals, don't get me wrong. But we also discovered quite quickly where the challenges lie, because in the year after that, last year, we did a lot of analytics into the footprint of the assets we had in our own data center or in our workplace devices. We also looked on the circularity side, where it's even more difficult to get a good view on the bill of material and where do the materials come from, where do they go, and how close are those loops. And then this year we're talking a lot about and we're starting to really put it into a governance to embed it into the IT way of working within the bank. So it's actually in all phases of IT delivery, sustainability is there. From already the business IT dialogue to the requirements gathering, to the designs, the delivery, the operations, all the, you could say, major steps in IT way of working. Now more and more agile and DevOps, of course. So the responsibility for this also goes to product owners and grid owners and development teams, which is, I think, relatively new for them. So I would say that over the past decades of IT, it's always been about what IT can do and not what comes with IT and what is the downside of IT. And with sustainability, there needs to be much more also awareness of that. And it needs to be factored into the IT way of working, into the different responsibilities and tasks within IT. So the last phase is to really implement and start steering on those targets, KPIs on the individual IT steps, selecting the right partners, obviously, and decreasing our consumption. So we are working on and we already have it live, a dashboard that shows kilowatt hours and CO2 per application. We also have
I will come to that in a moment, Wiebren, when we talk about reporting. So, but I think it's very interesting to see that there's a clear strategy, different steps that have been taken. You already started 3 years ago, and that what you say, the engine in a bank is basically IT. So, and like you said before, IT is the problem and IT is the solution, right? So, yes. And I think and Niklas, correct me if I'm wrong, IT now represents, what is it, 2% of carbon emissions and going up maybe to 8, 10, 12%, right?
Yes. So data centers roughly 1 to 2%. But then if you take the whole ICT sector, include networks and base stations and so forth, then you're actually close to 3 to 4%. And yes, it could definitely sixfold and sevenfold by 2030. So it's a big leap forward, unfortunately.
We're not going to show too many slides, but I thought that this was an interesting one also to give us a bit of a reference and a model. So don't go into too much detail here, Niklas, but you have developed this sustainable IT reference model. What is it that we can do with it, and what's in here?
Well, I think it's important to recognize that each enterprise is going to be different. Everybody has a different starting point. There are going to be different levers in how you address and move forward with sustainable IT. For some organizations, maybe sustainable IT is a very, very minuscule part, but the most addressable part is in sustainable by IT, for example. But I think what I wanted to do with this reference model was that as a technology leader, you can start identifying what are the key areas that sit within my own enterprise in terms of the key areas that I can focus on. What are some of the levers that I could discuss with my vendors, my cloud providers, my data center providers, for example. And then also, what are my access to different utility in terms of renewable energy, transition energy sources, like I would say nuclear power, for example, I would categorize as a transition energy source. And then obviously what we want to get out of is the fossil fuel energy source. So this is a toolbox to reference and come back to and see, okay, have I covered the key elements of what I need to address within my ecosystem?
Okay, super. And that's going to be available to for all of you to download. Let's break down sustainability in IT in a couple of different parts. So we're going to talk about data center and cloud. It's going to be super interesting application and data, hardware management, and then leveraging IT buying power. So let's start with the cloud, which is of course data center and cloud. One of our favorite topics, I would say, to discuss. So who wants to take this away? Maybe Patricia, how is your view on what we're doing with data centers and cloud? And you think that moving to the cloud is going to solve all the sustainable IT problems in data centers that we have?
Right. So I think if we look at what's going on in the market around cloud transformation, we see customers migrating their workloads to cloud service providers, for instance, which has a greater impact than solely optimizing private data centers. So the hyperscalers, for instance, today are investing significantly to become greener, right, through targeted measures such as buying green energy themselves and investing in ultra efficient data centers. McKinsey, recently estimated that hyperscalers will have a PUE equal to or less than about 1.1. If you compare that to a measure or PUE of about 1.57 for an on-premise data center, you can see the difference in how you can optimize. So I think with thoughtful migration to more of an optimized usage of the cloud, customers can absolutely reduce their carbon emissions from their data centers by more than 55%, which equates to about 40 megatons of CO2 worldwide. So I definitely think that there is a desire from a sustainability perspective to look at how we can leverage the hyperscalers in that way.
Okay. So Markus, what is your view on cloud? Is this for you a solution for sustainability in the data center?
Yeah, 100%. We have been migrating to the cloud, as probably everyone has, for a number of years now. Cloud first strategy for the core components of our applications, finance, HR, but many of the, there's still a way to go. Many of the supply chain solutions are not yet kind of cloud ready, and there is some work that we're still doing. So we still have 3 of our own data centers, but we're moving a significant proportion of our, especially also when it comes to data, to the cloud, and this is where I think choices need to be made in terms of what provider you're working with. There are some who are very, very actively investing into kind of green solutions, as Patricia was referring to, and are actually putting money on the table to say we also want to do the whole ecosystem of how the data center in the cloud is run, because it's still, some would say it's someone else's computer. Then there is a lot to be optimized, but there's some real investments happening, and we are making very conscious decisions into partners which are equally committed to driving their carbon footprint down and drive efficiency and working with us on that agenda.
Okay, super. Gunter, where are you? And so is cloud also a way for you to save money at the same time as becoming more?
Well, we are also far along on our cloud journey. I would say we have 85% of our workloads in the cloud, and we have the ambition to close our last data center, central data center, next year. We still have, obviously, in plans, we still have edge infrastructure. It wasn't necessarily driven by sustainability, to be honest. It was driven by other economic reasons why we would want to run into cloud. But I think, I'm taking the benefit out of that as well from a sustainability perspective. So that is great. I think for us, though, what we still need to mature on is it's great that you're in the cloud, but now the question is, how are you managing the cloud, and what's your operating model around the cloud? Because I think in many cases, at least that I see organizations who have now moved and rushed into cloud, but are doing exactly the same thing what they were doing in data centers. And I think, the operating model on how we do that is our next, I think, breakthrough or step change that we can make in how sustainable this will be for us. These workloads need to be active. No, they don't. They need to be shut down, and they don't need to be active. There's a FinOps model around that. There's things that you need to get into your operations daily from a mentality perspective to optimize that. Same with data, right? I mean, the incredible amounts of data that we are now able to extract and to store and to process for data science and AI. I think also there we need an operating model to figure out, there is an impact to that from a sustainability perspective. And how do you make sure that you use active data and you don't get into a storage type of frenzy for anything that might be available at any point for a statistic? So I think those two things, regardless who you are in the cloud, is still to be done by your own IT organization. And I think both of them require a mentality shift and a paradigm shift in how you think and how you operate around those cloud resources.
Okay, super. Now, Wiebren, I learned from you that we have to be careful with cloud a little bit as well, because cloud makes it very easy to just switch on another machine and start using more, right?
Yeah, so I mentioned to you the famous Jevons Paradox. Don't know if any of you heard of that before, but if you make technology more accessible, you tend to use also more and more of it. So you take away some thresholds and some limit or some constraints, and then all the benefits you first had will turn into an enhanced consumption afterwards. And that means consuming more compute and generating more data than we ever had before. So I think with powerful tools also come more and more responsibilities to use them wisely. That is what I would like to mention there, because otherwise we'll be fixing maybe, let's say, the limits our own on-premise operations had, but we're creating a whole new indeed paradigm in cloud where consumption is just so easy that you could also enhance your footprint and your impact more than you would maybe want to.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have to watch out there. Now, maybe a question to all of you is how easy is it for you guys to compare the different hyperscalers? And is the data, are they transparent? Is the data available? Do we know if Amazon is more sustainable than Azure or than Google or than Oracle? Niklas, do you have some data on that?
Yeah, I did put a section in the book on this particular topic, and I definitely think this is an area that's going to evolve over time as well, because I think we have new legislation in European Union with the EU taxonomy and the corporate sustainability reporting directive. So I think we are not there yet, because they're not apples to apples yet. Some cloud hyperscalers are only providing you with scope 2 data, only the energy that they are consuming, but they're not providing you with the embodied carbon from servers and from network equipment and so forth. So there is not a like for like yet comparison, but I think that's something that's with the power of leveraging our buying powers as customers. I think that's something that will come and standardize, but we're not there quite yet.
Okay, Gunter, I muted you in the meantime. So thank you so much. So not clear yet, but I think in the future this will be a competitive measure that all of us as service providers and to our product providers, to our clients, will be measured on yours. Do you already get that question for your services?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And I think for our business, right, you cannot, if we talk to customers, their sort of cloudification journeys are always one-on-one linked to optimizing infrastructures. So if we discuss where customer of ours are putting workloads, how to deal with technology integration, what type of equipment to buy, they look at us and want to be ensured that we take sustainability serious, and therefore we are embedding sustainability sort of by design in our propositions, right? Have developed sustainable end-of-life return programs in partnership with our technology providers. With one technology provider, Cisco, we are now close to 99.9% of technology returned, but also reused. And we ourselves, we are developing more, a bit like Markus was saying, strategic relationships with partners that have the same ambitions, but also proof points that we have in terms of 100% renewable electricity, those type of things, to ensure that if you buy services from BT, they are sustainable. And it's becoming more and more a key criteria to select partners, to select providers. And I think back to Niklas' point, there's a increasing need to make sure that what we report to the outside world is sort of auditable, so that we together develop a reference model that we can say the accomplishments of one company are comparable to the other one. It's like almost in finance with IFRS and all that type of stuff, right? You need to have these type of frameworks around sustainability measures in the future also.
Okay,
it's a good point, Joris. Maybe just to refer to what Niklas said before around legislation that we see in European countries, that will drive a different behavior. But we even see scoring organizations, and in Europe, for instance, EcoVadis, who's insisting on having a certain level of score for customers to determine procurement behavior based on a given score of their supplier, right? So I think this is already kind of coming, and we see more and more of this in terms of how customers are making decisions, for sure.
Yeah,
I was about to say the same. It is. I guess on the when I am the provider on the logistics services, I'm asked more and more, not for just averages of what a certain shipment has consumed, but very specifically of what has driven it, what has been utilized. And the same as CIOs, as IT professional, I think we should ask the same question. Did we really consume just an average of a certain share of a hyperscaler, or what was the true footprint that we have generated? I think that will drive a lot of behaviors on, as it did for me on our end, it will also drive behaviors on the cloud providers. And I'm seeing good developments there, I have to say.
Okay, super. So that covers, I think, a bit data centers and cloud, which is of course taking over most of our own data centers. Let's talk about applications and data, because the hardware is one thing, but then the software and the data. I mean, data is exploding nowadays. We're collecting so much data. So where are we storing all that? I can imagine that eats up a lot of energy as well. And can we do something specific with that data? Can we use AI and analytics on data so that we become more clever in how we run our companies? Markus, you also in our discussion you talked about AI being used on the data from the business. Can you maybe give some examples of how that works towards making business more sustainable?
Yeah, happy to do so. And what used to be purely driven by just the cost has evolved also at the same time in a discussion about what is the footprint of what we are doing for in logistics or supply chain. And we have analyzed for one of the major car manufacturers, OEM, their footprint and what we're doing for them. And by looking at all of the data and going to a very high level of granularity, and then starting to orchestrate and think beyond of what is going to happen next, machine learning algorithms to predict what's going to happen the next days, what the consumptions will be. We're able to do mode shifts. And if you look at, I guess, transportation, which I referred to earlier, significant amount of emissions are done by air. Everything that you ship by air, which is obviously the fastest mode, is for us in DHL is causing 80% of the emissions. So everything that can be moved for many of our customers from air to ocean, or ideally even to rail, that will be a huge efficiency gain. And we were able to drive emissions for that particular OEM down by 40%, 40. And that is obviously a shift that you cannot just drive by trying to do sustainable fuels or just solar energy, which takes time and infrastructure investment. All of that is happening already, but we can use the data at our advantage so much quicker and drive efficiency into many of those problems that we're working on, regardless of what industry we're working in. Our industry is obviously particularly interested in that topic, but I do believe in many cases that can drive a lot of change, and we have to drive as IT professionals. We have to drive that utilization of data, understanding what it tells us and how can we optimize it and utilize the algorithms that are at our disposal. We're looking at things like backhauls. I mean, an very old problem in logistics where you kind of send a truck on one direction, but obviously needs to go back, and then utilizing on the way back the same truck for a reverse type of transportation. That can be solved very, very easily in the end, although it's a complex algorithm, by machine learning and find those matching shipments. So that's something we're driving very hard, and our customers are very interested in that, because that is something that saves cost and that drives the overall sustainability agenda.
Okay, super. Wiebren, I wanna bring you in again, and because what I thought was in our preparation, thought was very interesting is that in your reporting, and let me bring that on here, you have worked quite a lot on your sustainability IT dashboard, sustainable IT dashboard. But I know that it's not only on energy, but also on application level. Talk us a little bit through what you're doing there.
Yeah. So what we noticed is that as long as we stay at 6 main categories, it kind of stays abstract to people. If you say this is for commute and this is for the data center or for the cloud. So we really pushed it a level deeper into the world where all the product owners and the developers live, you could say, and we bring it to their application and to their business process or their transaction. And we see, dear product owner, your application is actually needing so much kilowatt hours today or this month. And your trend is also going up high. So you're a big consumer of energy, your trend is going high up. This is not a sustainable profile going forward. And what can we do about that? And so we're really bringing the transparency to the, you could say, the people who can also influence it. We've done this in an agnostic way. So Niklas will recognize this, the cloud carbon footprint software. Now there's also more and more tools coming from the platforms themselves, but we decided to use the agnostic version. And we combined that with data from our own service management. Service now we have, will not be the only one. So the CMDB and all kinds of administrative administrations we have, and we combine that, and then we can give this insight now on an application level to product owners and DevOps teams. And so we can then also put them in, let's say, give them a bit more responsibility to do something with that.
Yeah. And how far will this go, Wiebren? Will this go as far as if I do a money transfer from my bank to ABN AMRO, that you can calculate what the footprint is of that transaction?
Well, then there's two sides, right? So I don't know which bank you are, but at least on our side, indeed, the idea is that we can follow the transaction and know exactly how much CO2 energy is involved with that specific transaction. Even we combine that with another thing you recognize on the book of Niklas is the cloud or the electricity map. So of course the energy mix is not always the same in the Netherlands. So you could even combine that with a real-time API that same transaction is not the same today as it is tomorrow, or even not in an hour in a day, because the energy mix is changing. And so this is also an interesting tactic, and maybe an offering to the customers that you can say, well, if you do it later on this evening, there will be more wind, maybe less sun, but you can pick a different time window to do this, where it has a better energy profile, or CO2 profile, I should say. Okay. So lower on carbon intensity. Yeah.
Super interesting. Now we've got more than 350 people following this conference on all the different platforms, and there's a lot of questions popping up. So I would like to call Daniel. Daniel, if you have, whenever is appropriate, please feel free to come into the discussion and bring us one or two of the top questions that are popping up on the different platforms. Gunter, where are you with your application landscape, and how is that playing into sustainability?
Yeah, like I said, following the cloud strategy, we moved a lot into cloud, and from an application perspective, we work a lot with software as a service. I think from a sustainability perspective, though, I think our emphasis is to create applications to enable our business to do things differently, and that is based on data and AI, particularly in our shop floor. As I said, we have high resource consumption, not only from electricity, but also from the rare minerals that we
There's
use.
a lot of noise, Gunter, so it's a bit hard to understand you.
I will speak up louder, but there's more people in the lounge. I'm real sorry. So we are building a lot of applications built on AI to make sure that we are energy efficient into our shop floors. And I think our real game is around, we have so many products out there into the market where we can obviously monitor much better than we do today. We actually don't monitor a lot, we sell, but we can bring the smartness to that, and bring monitoring tools to that will have a sustainability impact. It will have an economical impact for us. But when you think about it, if we can prolong the longevity of the products out there, then I think that will have a huge impact on the reusability and the circularity of some of the products as well, which I think is our biggest game to play.
Yeah. So let's talk about circularity in IT. And I mean, Patricia, you have quite some assets that you're putting in the market, and we all buy a lot of IT assets. Where are we on that front? Because I mean, there's a lot of work still to be done, I can imagine, right?
Right. Well, if we talk a little bit about what we do as cybersecurity leader of kind of building a platform that our customers can benefit from in terms of protecting their assets. As organizations use technology to help reduce their impact on the environment, and you've all given a number of great examples, whether that be monitoring and measuring or connecting infrastructure for better control, or cloud computing, we talked about the hyperscalers, or even flexible work practices. The threat landscape in reality is growing and evolving in an accelerated manner. So I think from a cybersecurity perspective, we have an essential role in creating the safe and sustainable future by protecting both critical infrastructure. So this could be anything from securing water sources or electrical power grids of a nation, right? And I think so cybersecurity as a role as an enabler, so that we can allow companies to deploy solutions that measure and monitor their impact on the environment while we keep their data safe and secure. So if we think about digital infrastructure and how rapidly it's evolving and changing, I think it's more important than ever to have an integrated platform approach to how we secure that infrastructure. And if you think about products that don't talk to each other or share intelligence, which can create security gaps and risk on one hand, but also increase complexity and cost on the other, and in the end could result in worse security outcomes. So I think this notion of, we see it more and more with our customers asking us to look at how we consolidate the large number of security solutions they have in their environments, and really coming up with more of a consolidated platform approach to how we secure their data, which I think is important in terms of the overall sustainability, strategy moving forward.
Super. Thank you so much for that, Patricia. I'm going to bring in my colleague Daniel, who has been monitoring the chat, and you need to yes, you unmuted, Daniel. So, do you have any interesting questions here for our distinguished panel, and what's the most interesting one, Daniel?
I saw a question about the companies, in fact, or enterprises that own energy generating infrastructure. Do they consider that as an extension of IT? Does a CIO have a say on that? There's, of course, a digital, but also the cybersecurity component and the element of compliance and reporting. So is it part of the challenge? Is it part of the game?
So energy management is that
infrastructure.
Yeah, energy management and generation management is that under
of the enterprise?
Yeah, is that under the control of the CIO, ladies and gentlemen?
It is under my control, but more probably on the ops perspective. So we have committed to have all of our real estate, our warehouses, all of our sites that we have by 2025 in supply chain to have carbon neutral. So we put solar panels on each and every one of them, put heat pumps into every new environment that we put that we build up. And that also needs to be managed, and more we have to have battery also associated with that to harvest the energy during the day, and then make sure that it's consumed during the night instead of using anything from the grid. So there's quite a bit of IoT technology that we are deploying into our facilities in order to know what is currently being consumed. So it is part of the agenda. And I think as CIOs, we have to consider that as part of, in my mind, as part of what we are looking at. Because more and more we'll have devices connecting to the networks. It could be a security risk if we don't manage it properly. So it's part of the equation for sure.
Okay. Anybody else wants to chip in on that question or other questions, Daniel, from the audience? Please be our guest. Come back on that.
Yeah, I see a question about the fact that hardware providers do not yet offer a guarantee on the full recycling of materials. Are we not going faster than the suppliers can? Are they not lagging behind in giving those guarantees? Full recycling.
Who wants to take that question?
No, maybe me first. I said Cisco, great example, 99.9%. I think back to what Gunter and Markus were calling out, right? Customers are very explicit in their requirements around sustainability. Hence, there's a significant push on the technology industry to do better, and also from us. So I think it's a sort of rat race to the right top, if you understand what I mean. So if the one is at 99.9, you need to be close to 100% to be selected or to be part of a future ecosystem where sustainability is a key metric to take into account. So yes, it's evolving, but it's evolving at the right and rapid pace. And I see a lot of focus and commitment from the technology providers to do better. I think, Patricia, you recognize it. You recognize it also, right? We see that also in the collaboration we have with you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, today, if you just think about sustainable operations, there's many things that organizations can do to have an impact relatively, you know, short term as well as long. I mean, Palo Networks today, you know, has a commitment to reduce, you know, both scope 1 and 2 GHG emissions by about, you know, 35% by the end of 27, and you know, compared to 2021, we're also committed to purchasing 100% true renewable energy and expanding our operational excellence through kind of deep energy efficiency. We've got a continued focus on executing a sustainable approach with real estate. So we've opened new LEED certified offices in multiple cities, including London and Bangalore. So I think to address this digital divide, we need to promote kind of the reuse and reduction of our e-waste, and then we engage in more of an external partnership to efficiently do things like donating obsolete equipment or accessories or furnishings for social benefit, et cetera. So there's very concrete actions from a sustainable operations perspective
Yeah.
that organizations can take to make a difference today.
Maybe I can.
Yes, please, Wiebren.
Yeah, maybe I can expand on that a little bit because I recognize the figures Joris said, the 99.5 of Cisco on the outflow, as I call it, so on the more the ITAD side, where they have a good practice. But I also found, because you saw our circularity ambition earlier on, and I also found that especially on the inflow of materials and getting transparency of where do those materials come from and how circular are they versus how virgin are they, is where a lot of, let's say, untransparency is still there. So I think we all know, at least I know by now, that still a lot of the materials are still virgin materials. So there's a lot of excavation still going on, there's a lot of mining, and a lot of focus is now maybe on the end of life cycle to regain the materials and then trying to boost that up. And that is, of course, very valid, but we should also look at the inflow of the materials. Where do they actually come from? And is it actually circular materials that are being applied, or is it still virgin materials that are being mined? And because that is still a big problem, I think, especially seeing the enormous amount of equipment that we make and use, right?
Okay. Yeah, very, very important points indeed. You have one more question, Daniel? That will be the last one then.
The last one, okay. Somebody asks, how do you ensure that trusted data when completing an ESG reporting? Traceable, immutable, auditable data. So how do you ensure trust data?
So we all have to. There's a regulatory demand to do your reporting. How do we make sure that these numbers are correct? Niklas, how do we fix that?
I think you also have to recognize that regardless if you are a provider or if you are a customer, consumer of sustainable IT, I think nobody has all of the right answers. Nobody's going to get it right from the first. So I think also it's important to recognize that we need to have brutal transparency in terms of what we do. Because if you don't have that, if you're not transparent in terms of where you are on your journey, what is your sort of, how does your transition to net zero look like? Because it's going to look different for everyone. Yes, I'm sure there are going to be examples where we are not getting accurate data from certain providers, but I think also they will probably find themselves out of business quite quickly. This is quite severe if you're not reporting in an ethical manner, I would say.
Okay, super.
Now, in that sense, Hendrik, if I may, right, the current sort of energy crisis that is hitting our businesses hard is, in every crisis there's an opportunity, right? So if I look across our organization, how forensically we are measuring the use of energy, right? And it also starts with we have in the UK as an example 40 to 50,000 engineers driving around in cars, right? This is a part of our operations. Back to Markus's point, it's not only the CIO, it's a wider responsibility. But the current energy crisis makes us 100% aware. It needs to continue to be affordable because we cannot always go back to our customers and say we're going to increase prices, right? So this energy crisis is driving a whole lot of initiatives to become better. Back to Niklas' point in measuring, and it's not perfect, right? But I see a sort of at accelerated pace that we are improving in that space.
Okay, let's talk. We talked a lot about sustainability in IT. Let's talk a little bit more about sustainability by IT and with IT, and maybe Markus, for you. I mean, you're not you personally and not DHL supply chain, but your sector is responsible for 20% of the emissions. What's holding you back to put in a lot of electrical vehicles and drive on green energy there?
Yeah, so I hope my new headset is working. It is. So what's holding us back is sometimes it's still the availability of some of the technology that we are deploying. Some of it is still in its infancy. If you think about kind of vehicles on the roads, ranges for the heavy vehicles is still a bit of an issue. But we are bringing these things on. We have committed to have 60% of our last mile electric by 2030. So, and you see us not only talking about it, but actually making this a reality. But sometimes there is still a lot of discussion around kind of what is the winning technology. Is it hydrogen, and what form, what color of hydrogen, and what is the I guess bridge technology we're using. We're heavily investing into biogas right now and partnering with a number of providers. So right now, I think we have to play on all channels. We have no choice and we have no time for the planet, and that is something that needs guts and really drive this very, very hard. There is not this very quick solution, and as much as we wish that it's all going to be cheaper, I think the reality right now is that all of us, all companies, will have to invest to make this happen. And we're seeing more and more customers are willing to also go on that journey with us and pay, I guess, also the higher prices. Some are still trying to look for the cheap and cheerful and quick solution, but I think we're running out of options, to be honest. And that needs some very strong and very ballsy movements, and that's what occasionally is holding us back. But I'm seeing a big shift, more and more, and I see many here today, which are clearly taking the lead and making things happen. And I think everyone on the channels here today listening in, I think there is a good opportunity for all us to raising the voice and making these things happen and making it measurable, and then driving that change, but also accept that some of the answers are not yet clear, and we have to work and apply many things at the same time.
So a lot of innovation still needs to happen to reach the 2050 goals, right?
I would definitely think so. We have invested into an electric airplane, and it looks like a bit of a I don't know, an idea and something that really wouldn't work, and it weighs much more than it can actually transport. But if we are not pushing this agenda and really trying to drive these things, then it will not happen. It will require that very strong commitment of all of us to drive things and help our partners to develop those solutions.
Yeah.
And then be on the journey with them.
A lot of resources necessary for that. Markus, you talked about the 7 billion that you're investing. Tell us a little, give us a bit more detail on that enormous amount that you're doing there.
Yeah, so I mean, a big proportion of that will go into sustainable fuels. There's not even enough sustainable fuels on the market right now. We are having a hard time right now to buy as much as we want. We are committed to have 30%, as much as airplanes right now allow to be utilized on sustainable fuels, but that will develop as well. 60%, as I said, of our vehicles on the roads will be electric. But we are constantly also investing into our people. And I mentioned to you in our interview that we are having this program where we have passports, very, very analog actually, not digital, where we train our people. And one of the things that we are looking at is to train 80% of our people into Go Green certified specialists. I don't know whether one can see that, but that's one of mine. And that is a program where we take every single one of 600,000 people onto that journey to understand what everybody can do. And I think that is also part of the agenda, that we take everyone into this equation, also our people that will work for us, our partners, our customers. So we have to talk about the topic of sustainability. And then I think we still have a chance to deliver that science-based target, but it needs immediate action right now, and hesitation is not a good idea. So that's why we have pledged to put this 7 billion into our numbers, and that is real dollars and euros that we're investing into this journey, because we want to be carbon zero, and that is for us. I mean, numbers is always an interesting game, but carbon neutral by 2050, and many of the things that we will require to make that happen are not yet invented. And I believe we have to probably be faster than that. And we're putting all the foots on the pedal, and there's no time for hesitation waiting for the real solution to happen. So every business case that is put in front of us is currently been checked for its carbon footprint, and not a single one that is just traditional solutions will be approved. It is not just the, I guess, EBIT, GP, gross profit is going to create, but also the footprint that it drives.
Okay, super. So two very important points, I think, from that. One is, major investments are going to be needed. And then we need to work with our people and create awareness and training around sustainability there as well. Gunter, you're competing with Chinese companies that maybe don't have the same targets and so on as one. And so there's a fierce competition maybe on price also. So how do you manage that there's a premium price to be paid to create sustainable goods? And also tell us a little bit about the life cycle assessments that you're doing for your products.
It's not always that easy, I must admit. And I think, to be honest, even if you look at countries like China, they also have an ambition, and there are absolutely companies that share the same ambition. I think there are other reasons why they can be as cost competitive, probably more cost competitive than most of the multinationals. That's a totally different story, but it comes down to the same thing where you need to find your place into the market. And I think as a company, you need to figure out, are you a premium seller or are you a more consumable seller? And we feel that with the products we have, that by bringing sustainable solutions to the market, that we have an advantage to be the premium seller. And we are clearly investing now, like I think what was discussed already when you look at the hyperscalers. It's the same for us, really, while we are looking at life cycle strategies to kind of like show if our solutions are used, for instance, in concrete. If you look at flooring into buildings, our solutions have a much better profile from a sustainability perspective than some of the other ones. And I think the investment that we are seeing in these types of analysis, which will require data and obviously a lot of information and number crunching, will become much more predominant when you say that you're going to be into that premium market, and that you're basically going to show that sustainability is a competitive advantage, which I think, again, is a good combination of economical value and the right thing to do for the planet. And that's how we're going to get out of that, in my opinion, as well, because it stimulates companies as ours, which don't necessarily have all of the backing that a Chinese company might have to go under the price. We have other ways that we can play this game, and we have other advantages that we can use. We just need to be smart about it. And I think that's where we are putting our investments as well, to do all of those life cycle adjustments and all the life cycle strategies, and clearly demonstrate the sustainable value that our products bring. And then we know that there's still a lot of customers around there that will value that and that will pay for that.
Thank you so much, Gunter. Wiebren, I know that you're doing something special around training your people and creating awareness inside the organization. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah. So we have what we call a workshop where we take people through a training where they can lower their personal footprint. I think that's what you referred to.
Yeah, also the Circle Academy that you put in place, right?
Yeah, so indeed, so we have this workshop for people to lower their personal footprint. How do I create a mail with low intensity? How do I reduce the footprint of my PowerPoint presentations? These kind of very practical things.
Wow.
But we also have a Circle Academy where on all kinds of sustainability aspects, people can find knowledge. Also published Niklas' book there, by the way. And so it's kind of a body of knowledge where you can find a lot of material that is relevant for you in a certain role within the bank. And I think that is that kind of training is very useful or necessary to bring people along and create the awareness, but also give capabilities.
Okay, super. We've got 11 minutes only left in this conference. And so I want to tackle the last and final topic of the day. And that is, if you haven't started yet, how can you start with sustainable IT? If you have already started, how the hell can we accelerate it and do it quicker? And Niklas, maybe to you, you've developed a sustainable IT maturity model. Is that a tool that we can use for that?
Yes, it's definitely one part, I would say, to embed and also to leverage within your own enterprise in terms of aligning that with your overall enterprise journey and what your company has committed to. But then the second thing, and Wiebren was also alluding to that, is also to understand your starting point, to establish your baseline. So you understand where are your key action areas, where does it make sense to start reducing your footprint. And also there are different journeys to net zero. So I think if you have a baseline and you can start elaborating and see, okay, how aggressive on these different action areas can I move? And also to Wiebren's point as well, that to be 100% circular by 2030, that is going to be a very, very challenging task. Then also, I think there's also opportunities for IT asset disposition vendors. There is technology already available today where they can recycle 98.5% of a laptop, for example. The only thing that they haven't figured out is how they manage mercury, because today it's more cheaper to break new mercury than to discard the mercury that is in fluid form in room temperature.
Okay.
So I would say start with your baseline and understand where does it make sense to start.
Okay, super. Thank you so much, Markus. Where do you think DHL supply chain is compared to your competitors? Do you have a benchmark for that? And when does running a sustainable business or having that as a serious target, when does that become a competitive advantage?
So that's a penalty that you are, I guess, giving to me. I'm usually not here to really